Bouteflika's government has squandered the country's wealth. The government recently lifted a 19-year-old state of emergency and allowed opposition voices on television. In Western Canada, the proposed logging of an ancient forest with a blockbuster name has sparked a campaign to protect the area. The provincial government of British Columbia is distancing itself from plans to cut Avatar Grove, but environmental groups say it's not enough. Imtiaz Tayyab reports.
This is Avatar Grove, a range of red cedars and Douglas firs that have been standing here for between 500 and 1,000 years. The environmental campaigner Ken Wu discovered the site while exploring for ancient trees over a year ago, giving it its now widely used name, inspired by the Hollywood blockbuster when he found it was earmarked for logging. Wu says the plight of the fictitious planet isn't too dissimilar to what's happening here.
Avatar, in large part, is about saving old-growth forests on an alien planet. And we realized that we have an incredible rainforest here on Earth that needs protecting.
The province of British Columbia is one of the few places in the world that has such massive and ancient forests. Its government is also one of the few that allows for the commercial logging of such trees. Environmentalists say if policy isn't changed, this is what's left. Nearly 5 million hectares of BC's forests over 140 years old are protected by the province. But with over 95 million hectares of forest land in total, environmental groups say that isn't enough. The plight of Avatar Grove has attracted tens of thousands, and after the province of BC's own independent forestry oversight body urged officials to spare the range of ancient trees, the government appears to be listening.
I do think that the public's calling out for better mechanisms to manage our forests. We've continued to do that, and I think as a government we've got lots of examples. Is there more work to do? There's always going to be more work to do.
The logging company with rights to cut Avatar Grove are now indicating they won't. Environmental groups say public pressure is to thank, but add millions of other hectares of ancient growth forests in BC also need saving. Imtiaz Tayyab, Al Jazeera, Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
This is Al Jazeera, and these are the stories making headlines. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi is calling for the United Nations or the African Union to investigate the uprising in his country. He also said that the 3 Dutch troops captured by his forces in Sirte are prisoners. Dutch authorities are trying to get them released. Meanwhile, rebel fighters are said to be heading towards the Libyan town of Sirte. That's Muammar Gaddafi's hometown, and it's expected to be well defended. The rebels have moved on from the key oil port of Ras Lanuf, where they claim full control. Thousands of protesters have stormed the state security offices in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. They claim officials inside were trying to shred sensitive documents containing evidence of human rights abuses committed by the former regime. The head of the African Union, Jean Ping, met the internationally recognized leader of Côte d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara, on Saturday. The United Nations is to reinforce its peacekeeping force there by 2,000 soldiers and 2 combat helicopters. Witnesses in Gaza say Israel launched at least 4 air raids on the Strip on Saturday. There were also reports of a rocket being fired from a Gaza Strip, or rather the Gaza Strip, into southern Israel. There were no casualties in the attacks. A statement from the Israeli army said the air raids were aimed at terrorist targets. Italy's Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi says he'll defend himself in court as long as he doesn't have to show up more than once a week. Berlusconi is accused of fraud and embezzlement over the acquisition of television rights for his Mediaset empire. He faces a separate trial in April on charges that he paid for sex with an underage nightclub dancer. Berlusconi denies all accusations. His legal team has asked that the court set aside Mondays for him to appear. In India's financial capital, Mumbai, thousands of people have lost their homes after a fire engulfed the Garib Nagar slum near Bandra railway station. Among them, Rubina Ali, one of the child stars of the film Slumdog Millionaire. The area is home to around 10,000 people. 6 people have been killed in a plane crash in western Russia. The State Emergency Ministry says those killed were 4 Russian crew members and 2 pilots from Myanmar. The Antonov AN-148 was on a training flight when it came down near Belgorod province, 600 kilometers south of Moscow. And those are the latest headlines. Inside Story is next.
Hillary Clinton lashes out at her country's news networks for failing to inform domestic audiences about world events. Well, is the US really losing the information war? And is public funding the solution? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Sami Zaidan. Well, America is facing an information war and we are losing that war. That's what US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had to say as she spoke before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. A war, she says, is being won by networks that offer what she described as real news.
You've got a set of global networks that AlJazeera has been the leader in, that are literally changing people's minds and attitudes. And like it or hate it, it is really effective. And in fact, viewership of AlJazeera is going up in the United States because it's real news. You may not agree with it, but you feel like you're getting real news around the clock instead of a million commercials. We have a great cultural export, but we're not competing in the way we need to compete in the information values arena. AlJazeera is. The Chinese have opened up a global English network and a network in other languages. Russia has opened up a global English network. We are missing in action.
Well, as you can imagine, those comments were not shared by everyone. Right-wing commentator Glenn Beck was quick to respond. He said Al Jazeera was the propaganda arm of the Middle East and Islamic extremism. He went on to say, you have the Secretary of State of the United States of America saying you cannot get real news here in America. You can only get it from Al Jazeera. Everybody knows it. Well, this is insanity. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by our three guests now in London. Tom Fenton, former foreign correspondent for CBS and author of Bad News, The Decline of Reporting, The Business of News and the Danger to Us All. Charlie Wolf, a political commentator and broadcaster, and joining us on broadband from Cairo, Abdullah Schleifer. He's a former NBC Cairo bureau chief and now Professor Emeritus of Journalism at the American University of Cairo. Thank you all for joining us. If I could start with Tom, first of all, is there a media war going on?
Well, if there's a media war going on, the American networks are absent from the combat to a large extent. Most of the mainstream American broadcasters, as well as the mainstream printed press, really went out of the foreign or international news gathering business a long time ago.
Why did you say if there, Tom? Why did you start with if?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Are you not convinced that there is a media war going on?
Well, I'm not sure what war you're talking about. If you're talking about the information war, yes, no question about that. I was thinking about our own domestic market in the United States, which is so poorly